What's going on, y'all? Thanks for checking in with Callie. Please like, subscribe if you haven't. So at this point, I would say, the chances of the Clippers re-signing Paul George, honestly, you can basically take your pick within that answer because, it's really a question mark with it, honestly. Because, when you look at the way the Clippers are playing right now, as a team collectively, they're not playing great. And a lot of criticism is being passed around from player to player. But if you look at what's going on right now, specifically, the two main players that's getting the most criticism out of the whole thing more so has been Paul George and especially James Harden. Even James Harden more so than Paul George, if you ask me. Because Paul George is still, he's still putting up decent numbers the last several games. But it's not really equating to any wins. So, with that being said, it's like it really doesn't mean much. And really, even Kawhi and the rest of them, like I said, collectively as a team, they're not looking like the team that a lot of people thought they would look like after the All-Star break. Because prior to the All-Star break, they looked like the best team in the league. Kawhi looked like the best player in the league, which I still think he is. When healthy, he's still one of the top players in the league, no doubt about that. But everything looks a lot different on the surface now when you look at the team based upon where they are now prior to where they were before the All-Star break. With that being said, even still, Paul George's contract has not been renewed, and a lot of people are probably sitting around looking at it and they're wondering why. But when you look at Paul George's production and what he does against the better competition, what he does against better defenders, what he's doing in regards to percentage-wise, shooting, and his shot selection, everything takes into account when you look at a team and when you try to re-sign somebody. And when you re-sign a player, you're looking at everything that he brings to the team on both ends of the floor, especially if it's a player like a Paul George, because he is a two-way player. So both ends of the floor, Paul George really isn't living up to expectation. And really, you can say that about any player on the Clippers, but Kawhi is always the most consistent both ways on the floor. So really, he's a little bit different. And plus, he's the best player on the team. So it definitely goes without saying they will re-sign him first because he's the guy. And, when he's right, he's definitely the best player on the floor. And it's not even close. But my point is, the reason why Paul George might not be getting re-signed, in which, he might not be too baffled by it. But the reason why more so is because, as I said a few minutes ago, he doesn't really show up against the better competition. Like, if they're playing the Trailblazers, if they're playing, teams of that nature, Paul George will drop 30, 40 points easily. But when they're playing against teams like the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Denver Nuggets, teams like that, he really just does not show up the way they think that he should. And I think that's a halt in the decision, along with the way the team is playing collectively. You see what I'm saying? Because the way Kawhi goes out there and play, nobody on the team is going to be as efficient as Kawhi Leonard. That's just not the way it goes. Nobody in the NBA is as efficient as Kawhi Leonard is, because that's just the type of player he is. That's what makes him unique. That's what makes him great. And that's what makes, him just be one of the most dominant players in the league when he's right and when he's healthy. But what's being asked of Paul George, and along with somebody like James Harden, is to go out there and be consistent enough to give us decent numbers every single night. Now, Paul George, as I said before, between him and James Harden, they don't need to score between 19 and 20 points a game. They don't need to go out there and try to score 30 and take over games like that, because that's not what their position is asking them to do, because that's the reason why they're the number 2 and the number 3 best players on the team. Go out there and just be consistent. I guarantee you, if Paul George or James Harden was more consistent, both of them would probably have a new contract by now. I guarantee they probably would, because I can't really say guarantee too much for James Harden, but for Paul George, heck yeah, by now he would definitely have a new contract in his hand, because like I said, they will see what they're getting out of Paul George every game is backing Kawhi up, being consistent to where Kawhi can count on that every single game, along with Kawhi being efficient, and it can make their chances of winning a whole lot better as a team, as a unit, because there's been too many games I've watched this year specifically where I would see Kawhi have 25, 28, 32, 31 points, and Paul George will have like a 15-point game, a 14-point game. That's just not good enough. You know what I'm saying? Especially when you're trying to win championships. You need your first 2 best players to really, put their foot down and make it known to every opposing team that you're getting the best of both worlds every time you step on the floor. And with these 2 players specifically, Kawhi and PG, you got to expect defense and offense. And really defensively, I'm not saying Paul George's numbers and everything and went down so far, but it's like offensively, you're not getting what you feel like you need to get out of him. Because when you look at the Minnesota Timberwolves teams like that, I see Anthony Edwards, he'll have a good game, but Cat will also have a good game too. And it's against the good teams they're doing it. You see what I'm saying? Just to give you an example, same thing with a team like the Lakers. You know what I'm saying? Like LeBron has a good game and Anthony Davis has a good game a lot of times. You know what I'm saying? It just looks more consistent between the two players when both of them are on the floor. And the same thing with other teams that have duos like that. But with the Kawhi and PG duo, it's too many games I think I've looked at to where I wondered, like, okay, is PG going to play the way we know that he can, or is he going to play down to his competition like he does a lot of times? And see, when that happens, that's when, owners and people like that look at stuff like that and they be like, okay, well, we can give Paul George this money, but are we going to get the production that we should be getting out of him? Because as a number 2 player, 1B player, whatever people think of him as, it doesn't matter. He's still supposed to be putting up the numbers that he's supposed to. And he's supposed to be one of the elite players in the league. A lot of people look at Paul George as like a top 10 player in the league. And you got to play that way when you're going against better competition. I don't want to see Paul George just put up 35, 40 points against the Bulls and the Trailblazers and teams like that, because that's not going to help the Clippers win championships. He's got to be putting up 25 plus points against, the Denver Nuggets, against the Timberwolves, against, OKC, against the Celtics, so he's got to be putting up numbers like that against those teams, the teams that really got guys who can guard you a lot better, guys who are a little bit more physical, guys that guard you to the point where you got to show how talented you are and how dominant you are as a player to not let their defense hinder your offense. And that's the thing with Paul George. When you look at him play, a lot of times that's what's hindering him from probably getting that contract. And like I said, on top of all that, with the Clippers not playing good at all right now as a team, as a unit, that also holds things back in regards to re-signing and seeing who's really who and what everybody is made of. You see what I'm saying? So it's like all of it's a totality thing right now. And hopefully, for Paul George, hopefully he continues to keep playing. The last several games, I think he's been playing pretty decent, honestly. He's been putting up good numbers. But that's the thing with Paul George. It's always a stretch. It's always a wave of him doing that. It's never really consistent. And that's been the problem throughout his career. It's waves and stretches. He's a streaky type shooter. And I keep telling you guys, when you're a streaky type shooter, that means you have a wave of scoring to where you look like an MVP caliber type player. But then you also have a big wave of non-production to where it doesn't help your team win because you're not actually living up to the expectation of what people seen you do in previous nights. And now you're reverting back to who you really are, which is above average player, a star player that's basically playing a superstar role. You see what I'm saying? And that's the thing with Paul George. And that's the one thing that's hindered his career a lot, I think, as a player overall, which is the reason why some people might debate whether he'll make the Hall of Fame or not. So, I personally think he will make the Hall of Fame, but, they definitely just need to see more from Paul George in that way and just the team overall. And like I said, it's a tough battle for the Clippers right now. It really is. Things are not looking the greatest. They're not really looking like the strong team they were. And now, contracts are in the balance and, guys might be thinking about their contracts and things like that. So it might be hindering their gameplay. So the Clippers are really in a tough battle, tough situation, and hopefully they come out of it and get right before the playoffs and make that run that everybody think they can.